going on, guys? Welcome back, Leo Potzel Productions. Thank you very much for tuning in. In today's video, we're going to be having a closer look at this PTZ camera. This is made by Avkans and the model number is E20 NDI. This PTZ camera can record at 1080p 60 frames per second, and it does have HDMI output along with SDI output. So just having a closer look here at the back of the PTZ camera, we have a bunch of different connections over here. Starting off on the left hand side, we do have a USB connection, which is going to allow us to connect it to our PC for an example. We do have an HDMI output, which I'm going to be using and taking advantage of. I'm connecting this PTZ camera to my video switcher. Just next to that, we do have an audio auxiliary jack, 3.5mm for audio input. Just next to the audio connection, we do have the network Ethernet connection. To the right of that, we do have the SDI connection, SDI output. And to the right of the SDI connection, we do have an RS-232 input. And to the right of that, we do have an RS-232 output. And then finally, on the far right hand side, we do have the 12-volt DC in, which is going to supply power to this PTZ camera. Having a look here at the bottom of the camera, you'll notice right here in the center, we do have 1/4-20 threads for mounting option. So in my case, I'm going to be just simply resting this onto my desk, and it's nice to see that we do have these little rubber pads on the bottom 4 corners of this camera, which is just going to provide a nice, soft and stable surface that it's going to be able to grip onto my desk and not kind of slide around and move around. So we do have the option to simply just place it onto our desk, a nice level surface. Or we can go ahead and mount it via the 1/4-20 threads, for an example, onto a tripod or even the ceiling or whatnot. So it's nice to see that we do have these mounting options available to us at the bottom of this PTZ camera. You'll also notice over here, we do have these DIP switches over here. Mine by default were all set to on, which basically means that when I go ahead and activate the menu, it's going to pull up the menu and the options and the settings. But we do have this little chart over here at the bottom of the camera that basically tells us on what type of output format resolution that we want to be filming at, or what type of settings we want to basically encounter when we go ahead and use this PTZ camera. So you're going to want to take a look at this chart and therefore configure these DIP switches to what works best for you. Again, in my case, they are all set to on, all 4 of the DIP switches, which is configured to the menu option, which I feel is probably our best bet. That way we can change the resolution or the frame rate, etc. via the menu, which is probably our easiest and best option. So having a closer look here at the front of the PTZ camera, we do have these 2 small LED lights. The one over here onto the right hand side is basically showing us that it is the power indicator. So when you go ahead and supply power to this PTZ camera, it's going to obviously illuminate. And the one over here onto the left hand side is the communication indicator as well. So some cool specs about this PTZ camera: it does have a 20x zoom along with a digital zoom up to ×12. So alone with the 20x zoom is going to have a nice far zoom range, which is going to be fantastic. And again, for whatever reason, if you do need that extra zoom, you can go within the menu of this camera and you can configure it to go all the way up to 12x digital zoom as well. This camera does have auto exposure. You can also set it manual exposure. It does have auto white balance along with some preset white balance and some manual white balance settings. Along with the auto focus, we can also set it to auto focus or manual focus, and it's just going to be nice and easy to basically adjust these settings as far as the focus, the exposure, and the zooming in and out. So it's going to be very nice to use, and I'm going to be showing you guys in this video on how it operates. So here I have the user manual of this PTZ camera, and I just wanted to go over and share with you guys some specs that I find that are interesting that you may also want to be aware of. So starting off with the image sensor, it does use a 1/2.8 inch CMOS sensor, which is going to be fantastic. I believe it's actually using the Sony sensor, and it also has a 2.14 megapixel as well. As I mentioned, the optical zoom is 20 times, the digital zoom is 12 times. So as far as the iris, the aperture of this camera lens, it does open up as far as f1.6, which is going to be fantastic option in low light situations. The horizontal viewing angle is 59.5 to 2.9 degrees. We do have the focus system as we talked about briefly earlier. We have the autofocus, manual focus, PTZ trigger, and along with the one push trigger as far as the focusing options. The shutter speed, we do have 1/1 second all the way up to 1/10,000 of a second. The gain, we have auto and manual. White balance, we have auto white balance, indoor preset and outdoor preset. A one push, we have manual and auto tracking white balance as well. Exposure control, we have auto exposure, manual exposure, and also shutter priority and also iris priority. So those are the options as far as the exposure settings. The pan angle, we have negative 170 degrees all the way up to positive 170 degrees. So we're gonna get a nice rotation as far as the pan with this camera. Along with the tilt angle, it's gonna go down as far as negative 30 degrees all the way up to a straight vertical 90 degrees. And we also do have the pan speed, which can be adjusted from 0.2 degrees a second all the way up to 100 degrees a second. So we can control the speed of the pan and the tilt within the menu. Next, we over here have the tilt speed, which is 0.2 degrees a second all the way up to 60 degrees per second. So as we talked about earlier, this camera can record up to 1080p at 60 frames per second, but it does also offer a few different options over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and read them out to you. We have 1080p at 50 frames per second, 1080p at 30 frames per second, 1080p at 25 frames per second, and also 1080i at 60 frames per second, 1080i at 50 frames per second, and 720p at 60 frames per second, and 720p at 50 frames per second. As far as the image compression, we do have the option to set it to H.264 or we can set it to H.265. As far as the audio specs goes, we do have an audio compression of AAC. We do have the audio protocols, which is on VIF. We do have RTSP, RTMP, HTTP, TCP, and also UDP. So those are the options for the protocol as well. We can also have the option for dual stream. We do have the USB interface, which again is a USB 2.0 type B. We do have UVC and UAC support. Video interface, as I mentioned, H.264 and also MJPEG. As far as the interface, we do have video interface at HDMI 1.4 or 3G SDI. Network interface, we do have RJ45 interface and reserved for power over Ethernet. And for control interface, we do have an RS485 or an RS232. So some other general specs about this PTZ camera. As far as the protocols, we do have the Visca option to select from or the Pelco D. Again, as we talked about, we do have a 12 volt DC input as far as the powering option goes. The power consumption is 15 watts. So as far as the dimensions of this PTZ camera, we do have 176 millimeters by 169 millimeters by 136 millimeters. And the weight of this PTZ camera is 1.1 kilograms. So now that you guys are a little bit more familiar with this PTZ camera, all the specs and the features, I wanted to share one other thing with you guys right here, and this is the remote control that is included with this camera. We do have a bunch of different options and controls over here that's going to allow us to adjust the position, the focus, the white balance, etc. So why don't we just go ahead and briefly have a closer look at this remote control. Starting off over here onto the right hand side, we do have the power button, which is going to go ahead and obviously power on or off the camera itself. Right over here, we do have the home button, which is going to basically take the PTZ camera to the home position, to the preset, which is basically by default, basically just looking horizontally, nice and straight. So that is the default setting, but we can also program within the menu where we want that home position to be, for an example, when the PTZ camera first turns on. Just next to that, underneath over here, we do have focus as far as autofocus and manual focus. So depending on what you want to do, at the touch of a button, you can set it to autofocus or manual focus. So just underneath these autofocus and manual focus options, we do actually have the control to manually control the focus itself. So for an example, if we wanted to focus on something a little bit further, a little bit closer, we do have these little focus buttons right over here, which are nice and easy to operate. So just to the right of the focus buttons over here, we have in the middle of this controller the iris reset button, which is going to go ahead and reset the aperture of the lens on the camera. So for an example, it's going to basically go ahead and do an auto exposure. It's going to reset it to default default on whatever the camera thinks it should set it at. But if we wanted to, we can open up or close the aperture, adjust the exposure right over here manually if you would like to. Just to the right of that, we do have the option to zoom in and zoom out, which is a nice, awesome feature that we can just simply at the fingertips zoom in and zoom out on this PTZ camera with this remote control over here. We do have the menu button over here, which is in green, which is going to go ahead and bring up the menu on the PTZ camera. So once you have this PTZ camera, for an example, connected to your video switcher and you have your monitor opened up and connected via the HDMI out, when you press the menu button, you're going to be able to see it there on your switcher or on your HDMI output via the PGM or via the preview. Just over there to the right, we do have the back button or the exit button. So when you're in the menu, for an example, and you want to get out of the menu, you can just simply press the back exit button. We do have these arrows over here, which are going to allow us to control the camera's position up, down, left, and right. And along with that, to also be able to scroll through the menu via these arrow buttons. And we do have the button here in the middle, which is the enter or OK button. So when we are going through the menu, we can easily go ahead and navigate and select the different options that you'd like to. Just to the bottom of that, we do have these three buttons over here: call, set, and clear, and we have a bunch of numbers over here, so we can go ahead and actually pre-program, preset different locations and zooms, etc. via this PTZ camera and program them right here at the bottom via these buttons over here. So it's nice to see that option that we can go ahead and set the position, also the zooming in and out, etc. And therefore now when we go ahead and press the button, the PTZ camera is going to go to those different locations, those presets that we've programmed within the controller over here. So as far as the remote, I'm definitely going to say this is a fantastic option. We have full control with this PTZ camera via this remote. I'm very actually happy that it comes included with the kit. Okay guys, so here we are set up with the PTZ camera along with my video switcher. This is my external monitor over here, which is my PGM. This is what my viewers are actually going to be viewing via my live stream. So I am currently recording this video to the video switcher via the USB stick here at the side of the video switcher, and therefore basically this would be a good example to show you guys on how the video quality is looking from this PTZ camera. Okay, so I am also filming with my camera right over here so you guys can see my setup, but at the same time I'm also recording to these USB sticks. So having a closer look at the connections here at the back of the PTZ camera and having a closer look at the connections here at the back of the video switcher, let's have a closer look starting off with the back of the PTZ camera. So right over here at the back of the PTZ camera, I do have the HDMI output, which is running to the HDMI input here, HDMI input number 1 onto the back of the video switcher. This next cable over here is the network Ethernet cable, which I currently have connected to my router, so it is providing an IP address to this PTZ camera. And finally over here onto the right hand side, I do have the DC input, which is supplying power to the PTZ camera. Looking over here closer again at the back of the video switcher, this is my HDMI 1, again coming from my PTZ camera. This is my HDMI output, which is my PGM, which is basically being sent to this small little monitor display screen over here, which is giving me an example and you guys an example on what the live stream is going to be looking at. This is my final output currently right now. The next cable over here is also a network Ethernet cable, which is being connected to my router. So therefore my video switcher and my PTZ camera are both using the same IP address. And finally over here to the right hand side, we do have the DC input, which is supplying power to the video switcher. So basically what I've done over here, I've connected my switcher to the PTZ camera, making sure that they're on the same network, the same IP address, and I've also configured some presets on the positioning of this PTZ camera. So just to give you an example over here, let's just first off start off with the control that I have over here via my switcher. So you can see I have this little joystick that's allowing me to pan left and right, and also to be able to tilt up and down. And we can also, for an example, I can also zoom in via this joystick over here to the right hand side, and you can see that we have this nice option over here. So now I'm going to go ahead and press number 2, and that's going to take me to my next predetermined location. So here we have, this is the video switcher over here. This is the Cinelive C1 video switcher. This is the switcher that I'm currently using right now. So I just wanted to give you guys an example of the presets that I've configured here within the video switcher. Let's go ahead and press number 3 right now, which is going to take me to my next subject. So this is preset number 3, which we are looking at a subject which is a Sigma lens. This is a 600mm Sigma lens, and this is again autofocus, auto exposure, and also auto white balance, and I feel like it is doing a great job right now. Let's go ahead and press preset number 4, which I've set to kind of basically look at myself over here. So you can see the exposure is changing depending on the position of the camera. So overall, it's been working quite nicely. So next, let's have a closer look at the remote control controlling this PTZ camera over here. So I'm just going to go ahead, first off, I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in on this example over here. This is zooming in, this is zooming out. I have full control. So let's go ahead and go to a next location over here. I'm just manually controlling this with the remote control. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the Cinelive C1 video switcher. This is the box of the video switcher, and I can go ahead and zoom in if I like to. I can go ahead and zoom out. So next over here, to give you guys an example, I'm going to go ahead and control the iris with the remote control of this PTZ camera, which is basically going to be making the image brighter in this scenario, or darker depending on what I want to do. But here's an example of me making it brighter. I'm just opening up the aperture on the lens over here, and you can see that this is overly exposed, and as you guys saw, that the auto exposure was actually working quite well. So I'm just going to be bringing it down here manually so you guys can see that it is operating as far as the iris control, the exposure control. Okay guys, so here we are onto the PC, and we are just visiting the Avkans website because they actually do have a software which we are going to go ahead and download and install, which is going to allow us to control and also enter in the menu and options and settings within this PTZ camera. So here we are on the download page. We found the model number, we just found the file. We're going to go ahead and download it and install it, and therefore once we have it installed, we're going to be able to add the device to the software program, which we are going to see shortly. So first off, let's go ahead and finish this install. So once the install is complete, here we have open the actual software itself that we just downloaded and installed it from the Avkans website, and we're going to go ahead and add our PTZ camera. These are all of our settings and options that we have: resolution and frame rate, etc., audio. These are all the different tabs, etc., and menu and settings that we have control of over here. So our game plan is to go ahead and add this camera to this software so we can go ahead and control it. So you can see that I have full control of the PTZ camera right from my PC on this software. We can actually also go into the menu and adjust all the settings. For an example, the exposure settings, the autofocus settings, the IP address, all the protocols, all the different white balance, etc. We have so many different options that we can go ahead and configure here within the menu right from our PC on this software. So now that I have full control of this PTZ camera from my PC, you can see that I'm just toggling on the zoom button right over here onto my PC. That's zooming in on where I'm actually working on onto my PC. You can see me waving at you guys. And again, I have full control of all of these settings right here from my PC, which is a fantastic option, along with the focus control right over here. As you can see that I'm focusing on the switcher right here. So if you're going to be using OBS along with this PTZ camera, you're going to want to go ahead and download and install the NDI plugin for the OBS software, which is going to allow us to connect this PTZ camera to the OBS, again via NDI. So if you don't have NDI option as an input in your OBS system, again, you want to go ahead and visit the Avkans website, and over there on the download page on third-party software apps, we can go ahead and download this plugin for OBS, which is going to allow us to connect this camera via the NDI option. Well guys, it looks like we reached that time of the video where I'm going to be giving you guys my overall thoughts and review of this PTZ camera. If you guys cannot tell already, I'm definitely impressed with the build quality and also the functionality of this PTZ camera. We have 1080p at 60 frames per second, which is going to be fantastic, and we do also have control of this PTZ camera via the switcher or a PTZ camera controller. I'm also very impressed the fact that it does have the autofocus, the 20x zoom, the auto exposure, and we can also adjust these settings manually if we want to as well. So I'm also impressed to see not only does this PTZ camera have the HDMI output, but it also does have the SDI output, which is just going to be very helpful for future proofing your live streaming setup. And it's also very nice to see that this model, the E20, does also have the NDI option as well. So overall, I'm very impressed with the image quality and also the auto focusing, the way it's been performing in the auto exposure, and also the presets that we can go ahead and set to this PTZ camera, which just makes it nice and easy so you're not constantly readjusting all the time on all the positions and also the zooming position as far as the camera goes. So I'm definitely impressed with it. I would definitely recommend it for all these options and all these features that are included for the price range of only $450 currently right now. So if you guys do have any specific questions, let me know down in the comment section down below, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Don't forget to go ahead and subscribe, like, share, comment, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.